Hey guys, I'm going to take this chance to talk you through a presentation that I made a long time ago called Coding as Evolution. And my goal with all this really is to enable those of you crazy enough to build a startup to understand how best to get to the end with some form of evolutionary success, i.e. not death. So what does that look like? Bit of background about me, involved in various successes and failures. 3 multi-million-dollar startups, 2 failed startups, and multi-million-pound budget banking projects in reverse chronological order, roughly. And you know, sort of a lot of talk amongst engineers around different types of coding languages and libraries and paradigms, and really I just want to talk about coding in the context of solving problems in the real world. I want to talk about conflict, win, loss, waste, risk, and I think evolution is the closest process that I can liken successful product engineering to, and probably all coding, versus say some sort of mathematical process or some sort of perfect methodology. It's a search in the solution space, when really the inputs that you need cannot be predicted, and even the actors that you're sort of working with don't really understand what it is they're trying to do, so you're never going to get a perfect PRD or requirement sent to you to build against, and actually they'll actively lie to you sometimes about what they really need. So you may have heard of the Lean Startup. This is the science of invalidating our assumptions. Perhaps science is a strong word, but it's certainly the best practice of that. And essentially it's establishing a kind of build, measure, learn loop. And I think for me, 10, 15 years ago when I was coming into this, it was just evolving in a blog called Startup Lessons Learned by Eric Ries, and it's pretty painful to try and figure this stuff out on my own. So I want to help everyone out here. So defining evolution for you, I think evolution is this kind of process in which there are mutants that live or die, and they're constantly changing. They explore completely unpredictable environments randomly, and hopefully the work we do isn't completely random and we can be guided, but it's still an accurate kind of way of thinking about what you're going to need to do. So what is the problem exactly? A lot of the time there's really unclear expectations around what you're trying to do. Is this an experiment? Is this a strategic project? You kind of build stuff that can sometimes die. You don't necessarily get the feedback loop that you want in a sort of big engineering org, and things can be overly matrixed, sort of separating engineers from the customers, and there's quite a lot of technical debt that let me just edit this out. What am I thinking? 50% of dev time unavailable after large deploy. We hear a lot about technical debt, but no one really defines what that means often, or how to manage that in an ongoing way. The UX designs that are given to us can be hard to program. devs can work on really large projects only to just end up losing their jobs at the end of it, not really understanding why. Often project managers try to Tetris pack sprints, trying to maximise the throughput. Hat tip to John Cutler for that phrase, and it can lead to kind of constant context shifting and no real connection for the people implementing the work, who have the latitude to innovate, to really understand who they're doing this for and why. More importantly, even if they do, they don't necessarily care sometimes. And we can see what the outcomes are. You know, a lot of projects do get cancelled. There are a lot of projects that are imperfect, and most projects are over time and over budget. So here I am to give you yet another procedure. I'm sure you have read 1,000 books and tried 1,000 different things, and been let down by all of them, so I'm here to let you down with a new one. And so I've got 3 pillars to this evolutionary process that I want to talk you through. And like, I'm not trying to sell a book, like this isn't particularly well thought through, it's just life experience and what works for me and my teams. So, and again, I'm trying to connect this back to that theme of evolution, and sort of make a story here that's interesting. And really, I'm hoping that it's a bit of a call to arms. So we've got conflict, win-loss and waste. Conflict. Essentially, ideas live and die. Teams have to create and kill. And in the old days, or often, this is done through the highest paid person's opinion, the hippo. And they get to decide all the bets. But I think that's essentially a form of micromanagement where the team doesn't own the life and death of the project, the bets. It is possible to have a process in which everyone's betting. And you're already doing it, but perhaps it's not spoken about. Either you're betting with your time on using a new library or a new framework, or you're betting that a feature could be removed, or a big refactor could be done. And I think bringing everyone into that conversation of bets and that language of bets is super important. Again, hat tip to John Cutler for that type of terminology. But yeah, it's about democratising these bets across the team. And so you may have seen this cone of uncertainty. This is this kind of idea that early on we don't really know what's going on. We need to limit the amount of big decisions that we make up here, the promises that we make at the beginning, because obviously there is a limited amount of information. We haven't really connected into the real world at this point. So it's really important to just get started and start connecting to the real world based on the initial understanding of it. And quite often product and design teams will use this time to haggle for more budget. They believe that they understand the needs and they're going to deliver a golden spec that the tech team can then go ahead and build against. And this fails, especially for technical products. So there's a real friction here, but there's opportunity for those who know how to ride these waves. So we said build, measure, learn earlier on is part of the lean loop, and quite often we see that dev teams aren't necessarily involved in this process, and therefore they're kind of just given tasks to create measurables And if it's not planned for and scheduled, then it's not measured. And this is where, we talked earlier about these tasks that developers don't get to see what the outcomes are. I think it's really important to close the loop, give developers a chance to measure their own work and get their own sense of satisfaction, their own dopamine hits from the outcomes that are happening in the real world. And they're best placed to instrument that code in a meaningful way. They have the skills for that, and they can impact the rate of evolution by doing so. They can make the loop spin faster if they care enough, if they are part of that journey. And that means understanding what success is and feeling like stakeholders in it. So the more handoffs we have, the more matrix the organisation is, the less likely that we're going to have a learning loop that's meaningful, and the less likely we are that there's going to be enough context for that instrumentation to occur unless it's planned for. And you're just going to end up spending loads of time in some sort of design by committee planning loop to make that work, and you're just going to keep missing things, and you're going to lack the innovation necessary to get interesting learning loops going. So it's important to sort of organise yourselves into modest teams. The 2-pizza team makes sense, having it cross-discipline, not trying to silo the work out, and not trying to overplan. Bring the devs into the conversations with the customers. It's time to win, it's time to lose. Something's got to die for other things to live. So look at that. That's the Cambrian explosion leading into mass extinction events throughout the evolution of creatures and animals. This is a diagram representing the evolution of all organisms on Earth, and you can see there are significant life and death events, mass extinctions that have occurred, and there are parallels to this in product. There are times where we have to kill a product line, it's not working, or there are fundamental shifts in the marketplace and we have to react to that, and that creates mass extinction. And there are points of leverage where we can create whole new genres of software. So the kind of challenge that can occur is that there can be success theatre in which the leaders are trying to be optimistic, they're trying to show that everything's working, they don't want to see anything die, they're fully committed to budgets, they want further budgets in the following year, and yet the stock price is going down and there are clear indications that the product's failing. This isn't a matter of perseverance. It's not a matter of initial hypothesis has to be proven true. It's a matter of how do we adapt and mutate from where we are towards the new reality that we face, and how do we continue to measure in a way that gives us leading indicators of this success or failure versus kicking the can down the road and just saying, okay, it'll all be good in the end as long as we persevere down this road. So it's not uncommon for people to use prioritization frameworks to score their plans, and that's a good step. I think it can be really helpful and rational when we start to get into conversations around the impact of the work, confidence levels, how much effort it would take, how much we think it might take. But it is advanced guessing, and it can be a distraction ultimately if you're not crystal clear on the fitness function, the success function for evolution. So you have to start there, and it should be simple and it should be measurable in an ongoing way. Revenue's usually too much of a lagging indicator, so you need to come up with product metrics that make sense to really get that transparency that you're looking for. It's said that Facebook has up to 10,000 variants live of its website at a time. So that's an incredible example of mutation and death, where various mutations are not, where various mutations are getting killed all the time. And I would challenge you to ask yourself, are you able to evolve? Can you deploy rapidly? Can you roll back rapidly? Are you able to measure impacts of releases rapidly to make decisions? Feature flagging can be incredibly powerful in this regard, as long as there is also a pruning of old features, of old mutants that have not worked out. Then it can be a really powerful way of managing the evolutionary process. Consider product metrics products. There are metrics products like Amplitude, Pendo, and others that will really give incredible insights into product usage with relatively low cost for the developer to instrument. There are plenty of A/B testing packages out there now, but it should be said that the job is not just to throw a load of stuff at the wall and see what works. It should be guided by customer feedback, should be guided by qualitative work, should be guided by surveys. Watch videos of your customers using the product. Install Hotjar. There's a free tier, you can get a lot of video content. You can get live streams of where the mouse is moving. It might give you clues of which customers to reach out to talk to. And so, as I say, if you're going to use feature flags, if you're going to have variants, you're going to need to clean up. You're going to have to be the arbiter of death. You're going to have to be the Grim Reaper. Otherwise, things are going to get messy. So roll up your sleeves, make some tough decisions. It's not about dealing with things with total certainty. You're going to be making bets with your time. You're going to make bets about product death, about feature death. You're going to have to limit the work in progress. But be brave and keep moving forward. So this complicated diagram is just pointing out that, again, there's been various mass extinction events, and that there tends to be this sort of proliferation over time of variance that occurs, and then a contraction over time as the entire system evolves. And so, similarly, your product will grow increasingly complex as you start to support different variants and feature sets. But it's important to prune and to ask yourself really which of the things are moving the needle. You've got a limited budget, a limited team. Don't waste your time supporting all of those features. Enable your team to have that conversation around what can go. The reality is if you don't kill things, someone else is going to kill them, and it's going to be someone higher paid in the organisation. We've seen it all before, where projects get canned, teams get laid off, and for me that's quite often the result of a failure of the team to prune and kill and learn and adapt themselves. And it's not always the individual team's fault. It can be that they're locked into a matrixed organisation where they don't have enough access to the customer, or there are politics above them that have led to that lack of evolution, that lack of learning. And startups run out of money and budget all the time, even when they pivot. But pivot means to try a new experiment. So it's not always everyone's fault. And I'm sure the dodo was a very effective animal. Perhaps it just got caught at a wrong time, where there was a lack of resource and it couldn't weather the storm. But it's best to manage your own micro-death than some kind of external extinction event. try to find leading indicators of success. Don't wait until you get revenue. Those numbers are going to come in slowly and lagging. There's a big latency between the work you do and the money coming in. So if you can find indicators of success that you can create a North Star around, it's going to help you get that dopamine hit, get that feedback you're looking for in the team. It may be the case that the team needs to change shape over time. If you've got the wrong team members, you've got the wrong skills in the team, you're going to potentially have to wear different hats, or maybe even redeploy to new projects if you're in a large company. But if you're running that department and you're able to conduct these experiments carefully, there will be increased fluidity and the ability to redeploy and move around than if you are doing long cycle, large projects with assumptions baked in. Okay, that's the last slide from me. Thanks guys. Hope that was useful.